Yo, welcome to Sig Slayers, the comic interview show, period. I'm Mike the Sig Slayer, chilling with Mark, the honorable villain. What up, fam?
What's up, Mike? We got a real animation veteran. He has undoubtedly worked on some of my favorite shows, some of my favorite character designs. Let them know who we got, man.
Joining us today, we have animator Steve Gordon joining us. But before we chop it up with Steve, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please comment. All right. Our next guest, work can be seen in animations like X-Men Evolution, Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Ladies and gentlemen of the Stash Land, we bring to you animator Steve Gordon. How you doing, Steve?
Good. Yourselves?
I'm doing great, man. I'm glad to have you on. We're going to just dive right on in. Steve, normally we ask our guests, the first question is their comic book origin story, how they got their first gig in pro comics. But you have such an illustrious career in animation with your artwork. So our first question is going to be, how did you get your first gig in animation? What was that journey like being an artist, and how did you develop that into a career in animation?
Well, I got into it by accident, actually. I was in high school, and I was getting my portfolio ready to start submitting to art schools at the beginning of my senior year. And my art teacher, who was actually working as my sort of advisor as well, saw an ad in the trade papers looking for portfolio submissions. So she thought that it would do two things, hopefully. A, get me a portfolio review, a professional portfolio review, and a chance to, take a little of the wind out of my sails. Because, I'm in high school, there's always one kid who's the top artist and all that other stuff, whether they deserve to be or not, there's always someone there. And in my case, it was me. So she thought it would help to let me know there are other better people out there. And unfortunately, she was wrong about the portfolio review. No one gives you a review. They either say yes or no. And I got the job. So that kind of didn't help any. And it also didn't take the wind out of my sails. That happened after I saw who else was there. And I realized that I was really low tier art and didn't quite know how I got the gig, and it was just luck. So that's where it was.
And what was the project?
It was back in 1977 on Lord of the Rings for Ralph Bakshi, the animated Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Your first gig was on a Lord of the Rings project?
Yeah, the animated version, yes.
Yeah, I saw that. I grew up on that too.
Yeah, see?
Wow, that's crazy. I did not know that. Okay, so Steve, so now we know your origin story animation was accident, and you told your teacher to hold your beer, and you got the job. But who were some of your influences growing up? Like what kind of genre did you dwell in back then?
Well, basically, I had in my mind I'd become an illustrator. Try to go that route and stuff. Illustration was pretty big and hot at that time in the 70s, and really liked Frank Frazetta and all that other stuff that was going on right then. So he was like major influence and goal. And then, and I liked, other comic artists too as well, Gil Kane and Steve Ditko and John Buscema and, a lot of those others and stuff. But I mean, Frazetta was like it for me. I mean, that was when his wife and first started to come out with the posters and the books and stuff. So I was a big fan. So,
Steve, I want to ask you about your role as lead character designer for the popular series X-Men Evolution. Okay. What was the selection process like for the lead character designer role?
Well, first off, I was the only character designer, not the lead. So I guess I was technically the lead, but we did not have a budget for much more than that. And I was able to get it all done. So the way it started is a friend of mine and someone I'd worked with off and on for quite a while, Boyd Kirkland, was given the job of being the producer of the show. And he hired me and a couple of other guys to be directors on the show. He needed 3 people to direct on it. And so we had a couple month lead time before we actually had to start producing episodes. And so we were all kind of pitching ideas for character designs and trying to come up with stuff and figure out where to go with it and whatnot. And at some point, the stuff I was doing kind of hit the mark more than anyone. One of the other directors kind of came up with the first basic uniforms for the characters, but I came up with a lot of the personality stuff, the actual look of the characters, which was important, especially Rogue. I mean, I came up with her and made her kind of a goth chick. And that kind of set the precedent for how we wanted to go and how far off we were willing to go away from the original canon and the original cartoon and the comics and such. So, my goal from the very get-go was, if it was done in the original animated version, then we were not going to do it in this one. And I was able to lead everyone else that direction too. So
Perfect. You hit on my next point. I was going to talk about Scarlet Witch and Rogue both having that alternative goth look that's been very popular even nowadays. Can you tell us about the research that went into that look, and what was the influence in that look?
Well, a lot of it was just to start with, especially Scarlet Witch came later. She was a second season character, but Rogue was first, and it was just kind of thinking about someone that couldn't get touched or want to be touched, and was kind of cocooned herself away from people. And so I started, thinking what that might be. And I had kids at that age and stuff. So I kind of knew a little bit about the goth stuff and whatnot. And I'd seen a lot of movies and whatnot that included goth characters and what. So the research I did for costuming and stuff was, in those days, there was no real Google. So I had to make my way down to magazine stores and whatnot, and look kind of probably questionable and buying a lot of teen magazines and whatnot. I was a lot younger than I am now, so it wasn't quite as weird, but it was still pretty weird. Buying, Teen Vogue and all this other stuff and whatnot. So.
Yeah.
Now, I have an overall general process question about animation. Mm-hmm. And so, because I'm pretty sure it's kind of like the same steps every show. Can you tell us what's the steps, or maybe not, but if you could just give us an example using X-Men Evolution, what was the steps of development from conception to air?
Well, I mean, there's no linear exact thing that works for every show, and it depends. Obviously this one, well, maybe not obviously, this one was developed because at that time Marvel was more of a toy company. They were Toy Biz and such. They wanted another line of characters that they could produce, another line of Marvel X-Men characters that they could produce and sell in toy stores. And at that time, their main outlet was KB Toy Stores, which no longer exists.
Right.
And so they were starting to produce the toys based on the movie, which hadn't quite come out yet, but we were kind of tipping towards a little bit, and which probably caused this show to get greenlit because of that movie being made. And so someone came up with the idea of a young version of X-Men. And how that exact process happened, I don't know exactly. I know that the rumors going around at the time were X-Men babies. Much like, because the big popular show at that time was Muppet Babies, and everyone was trying to do a baby version of characters at that time. And so everyone was a little afraid that that's what we were going to be doing. And it turns out that we weren't, and we kind of hewed as close as we could to what the original concept of the X-Men were, which is they were teenagers in school and stuff, which if you look at the first Lee and Kirby X-Men stuff, that's essentially what they were. In fact, our original idea was to put them and design the uniforms to be the yellow and black jumpsuits. like Kirby had. And we eventually, because of the toy company didn't do that, they wanted specific colors attached to each character, and they wanted unique looks for each of them and such.
So you guys developed the actual characters, the look.
Well, the concept of the show was developed, and there was a Bible written, and we kind of used parts of it, and we didn't use parts of it, and whatnot, whatever. And then we moved on, and Boyd was basically the catalyst for everything in the series. And so he would, he got things to work the way he wanted them to work. It took, a few episodes to get there, but everything had to be approved by him. He had people above him too and whatnot, but nothing got through without his approval to them. And so we kind of moved forward with the designs and the ideas and whatnot, and it all kind of started to mesh. It took a few episodes to mesh well, but it got there.
Who does the actual animation? Like, so is that does that get farmed out? Like, where does that fit into the thing?
Well, how it works is the script is written, and then the script is, it goes through several versions and whatnot. And then we have the directors each take scripts. Every third script a director will get, and then they'd have to hand them out to their storyboard artists. And then the storyboard artists would work on it and whatnot, and would eventually get it would time it and would get it working and ready. And then that would once it's all approved and ready to go, it would ship out to a overseas studio for the actual animation.
Got it.
And
okay.
We had people in Japan and Korea, I think, working on this.
Another show, one of my all-time favorite shows you worked on was Young Justice. Love Young Justice. Okay. We interviewed Greg Wiseman last year. What was your experience like working on Young Justice?
I was only a freelance storyboard artist on that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good. I enjoyed it. I mean, I think I did 2 or 3 different episodes. And the way that works is a storyboard artist, usually if it's a 22-minute episode, which I believe Young Justice was, they hire 3 storyboard artists, some in-house, some out-of-house or whatever. I was out-of-house, and you'd get about a third of the episode to do. And you turn it in, you get notes, and you revise it, and you turn it back in. It was pretty much that way. So I was just basically doing what they wanted me to do.
I want to talk about all the animated superhero shows that you've worked on, ranging from Mighty Mouse to The Tick to Ninja Turtles. Were you always a comic book fan growing up, or were these dream gigs, or were these just gigs for you?
It varied. I mean, yes, I was a comic book fan growing up. Like I said, Gil Kane I loved Gil Kane. He was my favorite comic artist, and then John Bissell, obviously. At the time, I didn't appreciate Kirby as much as I do now, because the anatomy always struck me as odd and such. But that's probably being too young to understand and recognize what was going on. But it took a long time before I started to work in comic book animation. That didn't happen immediately. And it varies. Sometimes I'm heavily involved, like X-Men Evolution or Ultimate Avengers. And sometimes I'm peripherally involved, like Young Justice, where I'm just picking up work and stuff, which it's still great and fun to work on stuff like that. And other times, like in Ninja Turtles, I did a few boards, I believe, but mostly I did what they call expressions. They'd give me their designs of the characters, and I'd go through and I'd create drawings that showed how they would look in different attitudes and stuff, which I did a lot of during a period of time, mostly based upon the fact that my model sheets on X-Men Evolution had a lot of that work in it and such.
Steve, you've done a lot of work as storyboard artist, as you just mentioned. This question is about AI. There's a lot of conflicting opinions about AI in the realm of art. Do you think AI is sophisticated enough today to do storyboard work? What are your thoughts overall about that?
I think generative AI is mostly a scam. I think it is basically the same as being used like tech bros to inflate their stock. It's the NFTs currently, which was a bust, and Bitcoin and all of that, and flying cars and anything that tech companies can do to inflate their stock, mostly by selling BS. Unfortunately, what it will do, because it's taking such a hold, is that there will be a lot of people who are afraid, just like NFTs, where they're afraid of being left out, and they will jump on it. In fact, it's probably more like streaming, where everyone had to get into streaming, and now 4 or 5 years later, they're all going, how do you make money at this? Once we have the subscribers, we can't make any more money. So now they're all now suddenly you're going to start seeing commercials in streaming services and stuff and all that. But that could, unfortunately, the generative AI could destroy whole entertainment industries if it's not jumped on and guardrails put up. Thankfully, just last week, it was announced that Disney and Universal are now suing Midjourney and a couple other places to stop them from using copyright material. And if you listen to the people in charge of those companies, they're already saying, if we can't steal the material to use and put into our programs, then we have nothing. So I don't think it's going to do anything other than damage, because it could take, I don't know, I'm hoping this Disney thing clips it off at the knees. But otherwise, it could do some severe damage, because definitely what it will do is destroy a lot of open jobs that people would get into initially, to get into the industry and stuff. It will damage that, illustration and everything else, jobs that normally didn't pay well, and you'd hire kids out of school to do or whatever, or people struggling. It will probably eliminate a lot of those jobs, whether it's book covers or graphics for the newspaper or something, because the AI could probably handle that. The big problem with AI overall, and they will probably never be able to resolve it, that's why it will never go anywhere, is you can't give it input and tell it to correct something without it completely giving you something new. It's never going to quite work that way, no matter what anyone says, because unlike the name implies, it's not intelligent. It's just a machine spitting out stuff and hoping that well, not even hoping, it has no intent, so it doesn't care whether you like it or not. It's spitting it out. It doesn't go, oh, good, this is the way you want me to go. I will fix it. I will go that direction. It has no ability in that way. So,
Steve, I'm stuck on this series. I want to ask one more X-Men Evolution question. X-23 was the breakout character in that series. She's now had her own comic. She's been in a feature film. Can you tell us about the origins of her development?
Well, yes and no. I mean, first off, seasons 3 and 4, I was working at DreamWorks and freelancing all the character designs. I was no longer on staff there, technically. Well, I guess I was on staff. I was getting paid staff. But anyway, I wasn't there day in and day out. But my understanding of X-23 is it was I know it was created by Craig Kyle. Mm-hmm. He was, and I believe Chris Yost may have had some input, or may even have co-created her with him. But my understanding is that it was based on his fiance's niece. I was even sent photographs of her dressed in the costume that we were to use and stuff to base it on and such. So, I believe X-Men Evolution was asked to create come up with a way to put a younger version of Wolverine into the mix. And Craig, to his credit, came up with this idea. And it, obviously it had solid chops. And frankly, at the time, I didn't think much of it. I'll be frank and honest that, obviously I didn't know what I was looking at, and I didn't think it would be turned into the juggernaut that it did. So got to give him credit for all that.
Steve, animation has been kind of like a natural landing spot for comic book artists We've interviewed quite a few: Chuck Patton, Stan Sky, Kevin Eastman, Joe Kelly. On and on and on. Whether from the writing standpoint or artist standpoint, I think Jerry Conway did some animation too. You also dabbled and did some work. You did a story in a Tarzan story in Dark Horse. Is there a difference in doing art for comics versus art for animation?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, you have to come up with a more refined, finished look for comics, and you don't have as many people peeing on it and telling you how to fix every little thing. Now, obviously that doesn't always happen in animation, but there's layers and layers of people in animation. If I design Rogue, I have to pass it by not just my producer, but he has to pass it by Marvel and this person and that person has, the network has to weigh in, and there's all types of levels. Whereas in comics, usually if the writer is happy with it, you may get an editor that has notes or whatever, but usually it's pretty basic. It's not quite as heavy handed as happens in animation and entertainment, in the entertainment industry. So it's a little bit different. It's a little more freeing in a lot of ways. It's more like writing a book as opposed to writing a screenplay. You're writing a screenplay, everyone's got to get involved in it, noted to death. You write a book, you're going to have your agent and probably your editor talk to you about it, but it's still pretty much your writing from beginning to end.
Would you ever consider doing like comics, like a long, like 6-issue, 12-issue type series, just on that? Or?
Sure. Actually, as I get older and transitioning into retirement, sort of retiring out of animation, I have been doing some comic work. I did, like you said, that Jungle Tales of Tarzan story, and I did a online comic based on an Edgar Rice Burroughs character book called The Eternal Savage that lasted for, I believe, 80 episodes or something. They're all Sunday size comics.
Okay.
Available online. Maybe eventually Dark Horse will put them out or not. I don't know. And I've also done some other miscellaneous comics and stuff too. And currently I'm doing a few more. I'm digging in and doing some other things. So none of them I can specifically talk about yet, but
right.
But so to answer your question, yes, I would love to be able to do more in the comic world.
Love to hear that.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
Steve, before our last question, I want to ask this. You directed the Ultimate Avengers animated movie. What kind of responsibilities goes into directing animation?
Well, a lot of it is once you get the script, you have to work with the storyboard artists and try to shape you're operating as the cinematographer and the editor and everything else. You have to get it all together. I mean, it's not a lot different than directing normal live action in ways, other than you don't work with the actors per se. You work with the storyboard artists and stuff, and you make sure that, as opposed to working with the cinematographer, you line up all your shots. You make sure that they're all cut together. And you work to shape the script somewhat, make it so that it works for you. And it's got to have pacing. It's got to have drama and whatnot. And you have to kind of make sure that it all plays so that it feels right and that you're happy with it.
So
you brought. Oh, go ahead, Bart.
Well, I was gonna say, you said you don't work with actors, but are you working along with the voice actors as the director?
It depends on the production. Sometimes the directors are too busy to work with the voice actors, and someone else does it. Sometimes they allow you in. If you've ever seen a voice session, there's a lot of people weighing in on the other side of the glass, and you don't want to overwhelm the voice actor. So to some degree, you have to trust who is in there, that they will get you what you need. And, often, like the show I'm on right now, Ariel for Disney Junior, We don't work with the voice actors, but often we will rewrite lines after we get the voice acting, and we or say, see, this isn't recorded right, and then we will then send out these notes and such so they can do what they call pickups for the voice actors and stuff. So we don't work directly with them, but we still get our way. So, if someone misses something or they don't get either the right line or the right read, we will still have a chance at fixing it often.
Okay, so Steve, we're on our very last question. Is there something that we haven't talked about that you want the fans to know about? Any upcoming appearances? Any new project?
Well, yeah, sure. Well, first, you talking about the comics, that's good because that's where I'm kind of leaning towards. I'm doing some work in that now. So anyone who wants a cover or a sequential, let me know. I'm always willing to talk.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for joining us. This was a great interview. Just know you always have a home here on the Sig Slayers station.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, that's all for our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the like button. This is Sig Slayers. I'm Mike, speaking for Mark and Steve Gordon. We are out. Peace. Sig Slayers.